Swamiji and I are already talking about this subject about spirits and feeding on us, and you even mentioned them lying to us or messing with our heads. One of my questions for Swamiji, and I thought we'd talk about today, was I've heard you say numerous times, all plant spirits lie.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear you now talking even beyond plant spirits to a broader concept of spirits. But that to me is a really fascinating quote, and I'm thinking of everything from a carrot to whatever is on our plate for dinner to things used in rituals. I actually don't want to necessarily focus on recreational use of plants, but just like plants that we feed ourselves with for nutrition, or plants as they are used in medicine, herbs, or plants used in ritual practices.
Well, plants used in ritual practices and plants used for medicinal purposes, have been understood for a long time. And people don't really, very much go into the domain of plant information, of getting information directly from the plants. Although there's a whole group of people now who do try to cultivate a relationship with plant spirits for medicinal purposes. And I can't comment on that work because I don't know how they're doing with it too well. I'm not deeply exposed to it, but what I can say is this. I don't so far see people doing plant spirit work developing a strong enough foundation within themselves to really be able to build strong relationships with a strong enough relationship with plant spirits that they won't be deceived. So, because plant spirits, it's not that they're like malicious. Some of them are. They're not malicious. They have their own kind of optimism and delusion.
All plants.
All plants have their own kind of optimism and delusion, which, and some of them are antithetical to human beings. Some of them are not. Some of them are just innocently sharing their optimism and delusion. When you think of like a carrot, you eat a carrot, that gives you a certain kind of optimism. And the plants that we consume, give us a certain optimism. But that is a completely unreasonable optimism because the end point of our consumption of plants is we evaporate from this world.
All plants, all things evaporate from this world.
That's exactly right.
So
I'm
trying to get to the lying part. How is the carrot lying to me?
It's telling you that you're going to live forever.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Because it's very important to understand, what if you make contact with your own heart and your own feeling and you cultivate your own flow every day? Then you should be strong enough in yourself, armed with this information that spirits lie. You should be strong enough in yourself when ideas come in your head, rather than thinking, because my brain is exalted and has been, awarded many, elaborate recognitions, that whatever comes into it is also clearly brilliant. What if we ask ourselves, is this really real? Am I shedding myself or what? Then, if you have a little perspective on, based on your own contact with your own energy centers and the flow within you, if you have some perspective on the stuff that floats around in your own head, then you'll be able to deal with spirits just fine.
And to our potential benefit and our growth.
Right, because eventually, you'll get them, you will be able to create a circumstance where they will work with you. You will not be able to create a circumstance where they never lie to you, but you will be able to create a circumstance where they will work with you.
So,
it's sort of like, it's not any different than people. People lie. Of course, people and spirits, people sometimes lie at the encouragement of some spirit. People lie. People are confused. People do all kinds of crazy shit. But, if you're clear in yourself and you're loving and kind and patient, if you have a connection to your own essence and you're working that, then you should be able to extend yourself to everyone and know what you can do and what's real for you and what's not, and then you can go ahead. And as you work more and more, that'll grow, and you will grow, and it will grow, and everything turns okay. But you have to be willing to work at it.
So with that line of reasoning, is that potentially why some are arguably well-cultivated practitioners, shamans, could possibly use stronger plant medicine to their benefit? Because they're able to have that relationship with the plant?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. But still aware that the plant could be lying to them.
Yeah, of course, the one thing I would like to say is, yes, that's true, and, I've never seen it. Because the one thing I can tell you for sure is, I've met in India maybe a half a dozen people, who are alive, who have really powerful spirit relationships. So, first of all, the whole circumstance is completely rare. I've heard of a couple other people's, but in the literally, 5 million people or 10 million people in India, maybe 50 million people in India, involved in some form of spiritual practice, if there are 1,000 people who have some real power, that would surprise me. Of all the people I have ever met, all of them, no, only one, Kapil's father, was not corrupted by his power, although he was in some ways oppressed by it. He wasn't corrupted by it. Everybody else is totally corrupted by it. All of these people who have some kind of relationship with a spirit, who have the potential to do something good with it, end up doing, first doing something good with it for money, and then doing something good, bad with it for money. But first they end up doing something good with it for their own ego purposes, to deal with their own self-esteem issues, and then they do something with it for money, because once you've taken that step, and the next step is easy, and then the step off the cliff is really easy. And what happens in those kinds of situations is people become completely sick. Physically, the spirits drain their energies, the spirits damage their livers, their hearts, and their lungs, and people become completely ill. And after that, their ability to manage those kinds of spirits becomes increasingly diminished until they're controlled by them.
How do I reconcile this with my studies and potential use of herbal medicine?
I don't think the use of herbal medicine hurts you at all. I think, that most of the uses of herbal medicines have been long studied and understood. And you are not going into this herbal medicine practice as a shamanist seeking something from the plant. You are going in as a practitioner who already understands the value of that plant to you, and you use it. Now, maybe for some plants in time you might do something with them. Okay, well, you'll deal with that when you get there. And maybe, the plant will, try to create a conversation with you, and maybe you'll go there, and maybe you'll knock around in that conversation for a while before you actually figure out what's going on. That's okay too.
So not to have to be concerned that all plant spirits lie.
Well, I think they lie, so then you have to be meticulous in your study of the plant.
I'm feeling unbelievably humbled, if not totally intimidated, by the profuse use of so many plants in Chinese medicine that I don't have a personal understanding of or connection to, that don't even grow anywhere near me, that I've never seen cultivated or had a relationship with, but I cerebrally now know how to combine all these different herbs in these doses to give to someone for an indication.
That's good, and I think that what you'll have to understand is the limitations of the results that you get from those plants is based on the fact that you and your patient don't live in an environment, don't live near the plant, or even you don't, and the soil that the plant grows in is not the same soil that you grew in. So the problems, the limitations of plant medicine these days are all about the distance between the patient and the plant, and also to some degree about the distance between the physician and the plant. So in time, that'll change. And we just have to be optimistic about that. Hopefully, and I think it is true, that more and more plants in Chinese medicine are being cultivated in America, and more American plants are being studied for their medicinal value, and all of that is good and will be beneficial in the future. Plants grown in China generally are completely unreliable because, first of all, the soil in China is totally toxic by now. The water is poison, everything is poison, and
the growing practices are questionable.
Yeah, everything is unreliable in China, and so you can't even go there with those plants.
Well, and that's part of, as much as I appreciate the studies that I'm doing in herbal medicine, and as I, am focusing on the endocannabinoid system and the potential use of not just cannabis, but other plants and practices that can stimulate that system. When I look at it, I'm pulling more away from the plants for some reason, and this is part of why this came up for me, and going, how can we stimulate the endocannabinoid system with our own internal, our own system, our own practices, rather than needing to use an outside source to stimulate that system. And I'm wondering, do we need cannabis to stimulate that system? Can I stimulate that system?
I think in fact you probably do need the plant for a while. One of the things the plants do is respond to big deficiencies. And, to the degree that you have to bring some balance to the system before you can activate your own internal systems to deal with that is necessary.
Same with needles, until I can get someo's connected to their own meridians and knowing how to release it. That needle's a tool to help.
Yeah, but after that, you gotta have, in America, we believe doctors can solve our problems. It's not in our belief system that we have to take responsibility for our problems and do something about it ourselves.
Yeah. So medicine is
And there is because we have this massive fear of dying, there is no balance that's actually possible, because, balance comes in the awareness that, the end point of this life is that we leave it. And so, and that's part of the balance, is understanding that we're going to die. And that makes us appreciate the preciousness of the moments that we have, and should make us appreciate our need to take responsibility now, which most people don't. Most people are hardwired for the easy way. How am I going to swim around this angle, and what's the angle, and how do I get around it, is most people's attitude.
And they're eating lots of carrots because the carrots are telling them that they're going to live forever.
Exactly. And we hope they are eating carrots, because, that's a lot better than eating McDonald's.
So the one question about the lie, are they all saying different lies, and how, and if and how can you tell what a plant is saying? Can you know? This plant's lie is this, and these plants lie.
Probably. I'm not that interested in plant conversation. I'm not that interested in the plant medicine of the shamans, of Huichol, or of any of the other indigenous populations of Central and South America.
So if you're not talking about specifically hallucinogenic plants, and you're talking about daily plants that we all interact with, it's not much of a worry. The lie.
Not a worry.
Because when you say all plant spirits lie, I can walk out of class sometimes tripping up on that, like, well then how do I engage with plants consciously?
Well, first of all, you have some information that has been passed down to you from shamans and other thoughtful people for centuries. You can trust that. The reason why this has been going on for centuries is because, and there have been revisions in the whole discussion, is because plant spirits lie, and people have needed to check again and again and again and again, and press those plants increasingly for the truth about them. So if you push hard enough, the plant will squeak and give it up.
Right.
So, but you have to really be clear in yourself. And what I'm really saying is not that, the plant's ultimate benefit is impenetrable. What I'm saying is that the first thing about dealing with plants is you have to have your own core practice together, and you have to have some ability to know your own reality. Like, I had a guy, he's still alive, who can make you think anything he wants you to think. Anything. And he will use that power for his own benefit 100% of the time. And, I had personal experience of this, and I had to figure out how to deal with this guy. Okay, fine, I did. So, that informed me about one of the ways. I started watching this whole process, and I was with him for another few years after that, and I learned a lot about how his spirits play. And, how they play on their own, how they play when they're working for him. I learned about spirits. The most important thing about, dealing with spirits and people is knowing yourself. That's all I'm saying. You have to be able to feel you. And if you can hold a plant medicine and hold your patient and feel yourself, you can sort out what that medicine is going to do for that patient. Now, it may not be that tomorrow you're going to walk into the clinic and be able to do that. But if you develop that as a part of your practice, you will definitely. Having a life of truth and growing that life of truth in an environment of compassion and forgiveness and unconditional love is just more of a challenge than most people ever want to deal with. There are spirits, there are plant spirits, There are water spirits. You know, if you piss a water spirit off, and they're a lot more difficult to pacify than a plant
How do
spirit.
you piss the water spirit off? How do I avoid pissing off a water spirit?
By, like,
Polluting the water sources.
that's one thing, polluting the water place, but disrupting the flow of a long-established stream in any property will definitely piss off the water spirits that live there and impact badly the lives of the people who, maybe for generations, the people who are there. I mean, fire spirits, they are not as common as water spirits, but you certainly see them get one of those agitated, and some really weird stuff can happen. And most of the spirits that we engage with are spirits that linger in the air. And those are of many types and levels. The thing about it is, if the ultimate reality is beyond time and space, then when we die, we don't go anywhere. We're still here. I mean, we're just in a completely, our energy is still in the environment. It's the place it came from, it's the place it goes to. And we can invoke, the spirits of any people that we want if we want to. That takes a little practice, but we can do it. So further, then, most of the spirits roaming around in the environment are spirits that are hungry, hungry ghosts, and, they're lost and they're hungry and they attach themselves to people for the purpose of eating. Then, there are spirits that aren't lost and hungry, which still feed on people, which roam around. You can find the effects of most of those kinds of spirits in homeless camps, in hospitals, in law offices. They linger in those places.
So they feed off, just like a lot of wild animals, they'll feed off the weak and
Right,
vulnerable.
that's exactly right. And so we think of like a pedophile. And we note that pedophilia tends to travel in family systems. Like somebody who was abused is more likely to abuse somebody else. What do you think is really the underlying phenomenon that is happening there?
A spirit lingering around that family.
At some point there was a trauma that allowed a spirit to get into a person and whisper some really bent shit in their head, which they then acted on, which then sets a whole karmic chain in motion that goes on for a long time.
So there's a lot of validity to exorcisms, if you will.
I think there is validity to exorcisms. I just don't think there's many people who really understand what it's about.
All right. All plant spirits lie. Make sure you know what you know before you take them in. Anything else?
She's overstating the case.
All right. It's very
For
complicated.
most of you, you don't need to worry about, most people interact with plants. The plants they interact with are cannabis, mushrooms.
Okay, so we're separating just plants for nutrition to plants that could potentially alter. Gotcha.
Right. Fungus. I mean, LSD is basically a function of a fungus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all those kind of plants, and ayahuasca, all those kind of plants totally lie. And they are big liars because they promise you something. They promise you some insight. They promise you some happiness. They promise you some power that you keep taking the plant. They keep taking your energy. It never happens.
So know your plants, but know yourself more.
Well, and the other thing is, those stupid psychotropic plants totally lie to you.
Yeah.
All that stuff is just baloney. And to take a journey, beyond the boundaries of your body and your mind, and to see the world, through the sort of the perspective of a particular plant spirit is a good thing, because it informs you that the world is really, in fact, completely different than you think it is. And to do that feels really good, at least initially. And that's also nice because it informs you that there is a good feeling inside you, always, that is waiting to be released should you choose to engage it. But as a vehicle to experience that good feeling, or to establish a true perspective about your own human life and the processes that you need to engage in order to complete this human life and move on, plants are absolutely unreliable. They completely lie. And, so knock yourself out with your plants, boys and girls. Have all the fun you want, but, understand that one of these days you're actually going to have to wake up and go to work.
Do the work ourselves instead of having a plant trying to do it for us.
Right. Because, and after the fourth or fifth time, the plant stops working for you anyway.
Well, and I love that even from the medical perspective and the herbs. I want to use herbs as a tool and a bridge while I help support people and patients to do the work in themselves.
Right.
But in the beginning, the herbal formula.
That's why you do herbs in the first place. You're giving an herbal formula. The person gets better. Then if they don't change themselves, they're gonna be right back in the same boat, and that's the end of the story. Well, it's nice for you. You'll make money, but
consciously.
And the biggest, and just to make it clear, the biggest challenge that we face as human beings is, the challenge of the toxicity of our environment. And so some plants you may have to use over and over again because our environment is completely toxic.
Right.
But if we don't take responsibility for our own welfare and manage our diet and our exercise and our attitude, then we're completely screwed, and there's not a plant on the planet that's going to be able to help us for very long.
And in a few more generations, those plants won't even be able to live here.
Right. Well, it's like, I saw a little piece on the internet, I don't know if it's true or not, but because who knows, it's on Facebook, of the Coco the gorilla who can use sign language, saying basically she was, really sad for the situation on the earth and, please quickly fix it. And I think that it's probably true that, gorillas are not exactly animals, in the same sense that, well, if they're an animal, we're an animal. So, but those creatures that have been born of the jungle, have a much more profound relationship with the plants and the birds and the animals of the jungle. And so they know their psyche is attuned to the circumstance, and she knows that the earth is very ill.
Absolutely. Even indigenous people living on islands know more than we do because they're connected to nature. They're connected to the sea levels there.
Right, and the fish and the plants. And so, that's the main thing. And if anybody's going to survive, we need to start taking responsibility for our spiritual development as well as our physical welfare.